Here we go. Mike, thanks a lot for being here today to address this crowd in San Diego. As you think about the connected device space and some of the developments that have happened in the market, and frankly, whether it's pandemic or otherwise, how do you see that space evolving, either the same or different from other devices, other channels that advertisers have used for decades plus?
Thanks, Lou, and thanks for the invitation to be part of this panel. When I was looking at the title and it was running through, I think, some really key areas for our marketplace and for as consumers and how we engage virtually and digitally. We had data, Internet of Things, cross-device linking, explosions of laws and technology. At the DAA, we've been addressing these issues for more than a decade through our guidance like cross-device linking, new data sets, now not that new, but in 2013, mobile, and thinking about how there are a new class of data types and services and channels, and how do you provide principles to give companies that guiding light of how to engage with consumers appropriately. And DAA has been at that cross section now since when it started in 2007, thinking through things like consumer engagement, technology, policy, innovation, and providing principles that still translate from then till now. And even with a whole set of laws coming into place in the United States and internationally, the concepts of providing transparency and appropriate control still apply. What the challenge is, though, is thinking about the unique characteristics of these new developments, these new innovations, and making sure that they're applied, the principles are applied in a way that work for consumers, individuals, and businesses in a way that makes sense. And that's an area where I think there's still a need. While there are laws that are developing, there's no Internet of Things, connected device law that has been introduced and passed in the United States. They're more robust, comprehensive bills and legislation regulating data. And we need to think through how to take those requirements and operationalize them. And that's where the DA plays a role. It has always been able to articulate standards and operational guidance to help businesses provide the appropriate notice to consumers, provide appropriate control, to make sure engagement in different channels, environments, and virtual worlds are safe and private and engaging and innovative, because that's what consumers really want. And DAA, whether it was through OBA, multi-site, political ads, cross-device linking, has over the years evolved and worked with its international partners, but working with the FTC, Congress, including the founding ad trades like ANA, have really been central to that consumer privacy debate. So as we're thinking about it now and the topic, I really think what we need to look at and what we're hearing from companies that are coming to the DA asking this question is, how do we do this? How do we take what's developing the patchwork of state laws and operationalize that? If you look at California, what do we do when we have to provide notice at the time of collection? I think in a web world, we know what that looks like. In a brick and mortar world, the AG has told us that it's notice at checkout, it's notice at the bakery when you give your contact information to do your pickup for your cake. But what do you do in a world where there's no interface? There's no consumer interface on the device like a smartphone or the refrigerator. What do you do in new virtual environments? How do you provide that notice? And I think that's where DAA is going to play a critical role, already talking about this with its participants about how to take the DAA principles and apply it to this new class of devices.
Thanks, Mike. That's really kind of insightful, and it also bridges us from a world, I think, where many advertisers feel very comfortable to this new and emerging area that is still, emerging. Let me ask you, you talked a fair amount there about kind of at the industry level and how industry bodies are trying to provide some guidance and a roadmap for marketers to be able to go down this path in a way that's responsible and respectful of privacy norms. But in your own practice at Venable, when your clients are coming to you around these issues, what are some of the questions or challenges that they're posing to you? What are the things that are stumbling blocks for them? Maybe that would be helpful for some of the folks in the audience to hear that today.
Yeah, we often look at it, I think, in two ways. When there's a new class of device, there's a new data stream, and how do you use that to improve engagement and personalization? And it always starts with the consumer first. How do we make sure that this is still a positive engagement, a personalized engagement? Take, for example, a podcast, audio streaming. Now, how do we ensure that we're, as a business, providing top-level quality content that is engaging, that makes consumers and individuals come back to hear more, and use data to enhance that, but provide appropriate notice and controls without interrupting that experience? So if you have a podcast and you're listening to the latest installment, you want to make sure that the engagement is about the content and not necessarily the privacy controls. But how do you make sure that they're present and available? So you have to think about the user experience, and that's always paramount. Then the second part is, well, what do you do with the data? How do you manage it and make sure you're using it in a way that's appropriate? Certainly compliant with law, but for the benefit of the consumer, and it's engaging. And so when there's new data streams, you have to really data map it and think about, if you bring in data from this source, this channel, this device, you're commingling it, what are the appropriate safeguards and back-end mitigation steps to make sure that you're using data in accordance with the law, but your own compliance program, but adding value to the experience? And the difference, really, the way of looking at it is it's the new channels and devices and the user experience and how to make sure, because these are new devices, new engagement. It's not just a web-based mobile app. It's thinking about those and how to make sure you're providing that notice, those controls, and the other appropriate safeguards in a meaningful and engaging way.
Thanks. That's helpful context, and I think probably some of the questions that many folks in the audience have for themselves, and I think it's validating to hear that they are not the only ones. That in fact, many clients are asking these questions of their counsel because this is still a new world in which we're going into, even though it accelerated an awful lot during the pandemic. Let me ask you, just going backwards to some of the things you talked about a little earlier. You talked a little bit about notice, and DAA has always been known for its notice outside of that privacy policy. It's that real-time, always-on kind of notice. As you and industry partners and companies that come together at that DAA table that you described, as you all think about that, how are you thinking about making that a reality in this new landscape?
It's been an interesting exercise, one, working with our clients, but also helping the DAA with its working group on connected devices and thinking through these issues that we get to see across the marketplace and see how companies are really innovating when it comes to delivering notice and other controls, to making sure that it's integrated into the experience. And it may be something like a QR code that is on the box, on the screen, on the device, as ways to deliver notice in ways that maybe not as functional given the device that it's on. If you think about a smart speaker and there's no way to actually press a user interface to get to a notice, there may be other ways to deliver that notice. And so we're seeing incredible innovation in this space to make sure that it's meaningful notice, it's outside of the privacy policy, and it's engaging in many ways that weren't a concept just 2-3 years ago. And I highlight the QR code because you can barely go to a restaurant these days without taking out your phone, scanning a QR code to see the menu. The norms are changing, and we can look at that as the privacy norms will also change. The way that we're interacting and getting access to information has changed in an 18-month period where maybe that would not have been a sensible mechanism for delivering notice, but in today's world, it really is.
Well, Mike, thank you. This has been awfully helpful, and I think gives a lot of people a lot to think about as they walk away from this session here today and go back to their offices and hopefully try and put some of this into practice. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Lou.